The day one driver for me to get involved in this business was keeping my brother out of jail.
I love that. What happens when you build a multi-million-dollar crypto empire and then choose to walk away?
I sold my company, Easy Crypto. It's just such a crazy milestone after 8 years of building a business, all of the ups and downs, all the challenges, and then it's not my baby anymore, it's now someone else's company.
Are you happy with the sale? I sit down with Janine Grainger, a former high school dropout turned fintech queen. We talk all about what it takes to go from zero to global success and to move and navigate in a world built for and by men. We have crypto, a male-dominated world. Finance, a male-dominated world. We have tech, a male-dominated world. And then there's you. We unpack crypto myths, imposter syndrome, burnout, and how to reclaim your power when your identity is based in your work.
What is important for people is to understand the concept of digital assets and what that can mean, what it can enable, what businesses we can unlock with that, and what we as founders can run forward on and where the future is going to head. It doesn't mean you need to know how blockchain works.
So whether you are scaling a business or just getting started, or you want to finally understand what crypto is all about, this one's got the gold for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Janine. Welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, the podcast for and by brave, bold, and badass business owners. If you're an entrepreneur who has outgrown those cookie-cutter business strategies and hashtag girl boss cliches, you're in the right place. Because let's face it, entrepreneurship is at least equal parts messy buns and runny mascara as it is the highlight reel we see online. So let's get real about what it really takes to build and run a quote-unquote successful business, blood, sweat, and margaritas included. I'm your host, Yaela, your rebellious entrepreneurial fairy godmother, and join me as I sit down with rockstar female founders for the most juicy, deep, and meaningfuls around success, life, and everything in between. Now it's time for you to step into your powerhouse era. Okay, Janine, let's start at the end, because I feel like that's where we are basically right now in this very moment. Tell us what happened last week and tell us how we got there.
I mean, the story of how we got there is a bit of a long one, but last week I sold my company, Easy Crypto, and it's just such a crazy milestone after 8 years of building a business, all of the ups and downs, all the challenges, and then last week handed the keys over, signed the contract. It's not my baby anymore. It's now someone else's company. It's kind of a crazy stage to go through.
I feel for you. First of all, congratulations. Are you happy with the sale? Is this what you envisioned? Was this something you built to exit? Or was there different circumstances that led you to this very now moment?
Didn't initially build it to exit. In fact, the very origin story of Easy Crypto was my brother sat down to solve this problem that Kiwis had of buying cryptocurrency. Was very difficult and also very expensive, fully digital product, and yet New Zealand are paying 15% above market rates for crypto back in 2017.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and we're like, we can solve this, this isn't right. And he's got a very big drive around equity and fairness, and so he's like, I want to make this fairer. So he sat down and coded up this software solution that enabled people to buy cryptocurrencies, and he put it live on the internet and had strangers paying him for magic internet money.
Is it true that was done in a hammock in Thailand somewhere?
Yes, so he was backpacking around Southeast Asia. And the true story, this is a little bit crazy, but absolutely true story, that the very first thing he did when he thought about creating this business, well, he never thought about creating a business. That's part of the problem. He just wanted to solve a problem. The problem was it's hard to buy crypto. So he sat down. The first thing he did was Google, what language are people coding in these days? Taught himself how to code whilst building this business. And then 5 days later, put the first version live online.
Oh my God.
And we've got code commits from GitHub that we've been in cheap this, and it's like, wow, 5 days. So highly recommend having a genius as a co-founder. It makes life very simple. But while he's very smart on certain things, completely dumb on other things. For example, he just put this thing live on the internet, had strangers paying him for magic internet, mate.
The risk.
I know.
Liability. What?
At the time, I was working at a bank, and I was like, so have you thought about, anti-money laundering legislation and financial market conduct and Fair Trading Act and consumer guarantees and like tax and he was like, no. And so that's how I got involved to, so my initial thing, your question was like, what was the plan? Was there an exit plan? It was like, no. The day one, driver for me to get involved in this business was keeping my brother out of jail. But then they ended up, we just really enjoyed working together, solving problems, and we built something really cool and found, people always talk about product market fit, and we found that really easily, almost accidentally. We launched this product to solve a problem that we had and we saw friends and family had. And within the first year, we'd become the biggest crypto provider in New Zealand. And there wasn't really it was just through word of mouth, because we couldn't market. We weren't able to advertise online. It was very much just people used us, liked it, word spread, and the business just grew from there.
But what a crazy ride. Well, first of all, to have your genius brother just kind of put this online and then try to catch up with the business and all the things around it. But also in a time, I think this was 2017, when crypto was still kind of this scary, is it a scam? Is it, what is this? Like you say, magic internet money. I know you came from the banking industry at that time, so quite a more traditional approach to finances. How was that transition for you?
When we started Easy Crypto, it was very fringe. Like, people either had heard of cryptocurrency, if they had heard of it, they just completely laughed it out the door. I remember having a chat with some of the exec at the bank. I worked in strategy, and I was like, hey, on our next strategy session, should we put this on the topic of one of the emerging trends? And they were just like, lol, no. Why would we talk about that? And, it was just, there wasn't so much that people were afraid of it as they thought it was irrelevant. And this, tulip bubble was one of the big comparisons that sort of went around. And so it was quite an uphill battle. And even the industry that we were in, it not only had a lack of legitimacy about it, but it also was so new that there were a lot of things that we couldn't do, like getting a bank account. I could do we could talk for an hour about the challenges of getting a bank account. But
and you came from the bank, the irony.
It was hilarious. We had this little in-house bank for the bank, for staff to do their banking. And I just went downstairs one day and set up a bank account for the new business that it started, naively assumed that was all I needed to do. And the next day I got this call from the head of risk being like, what did you just do? No way, over my dead body kind of thing. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize I was doing anything bad and terrible. But that's how people saw crypto, it was bad and terrible. And, so we couldn't get a bank account. We couldn't get insurance. We couldn't advertise online. Kind of three very basic things that most businesses would take for granted when setting up.
What a incredible challenge to innovate and to work around. How did you approach that?
Just a lot of persistence. And I think, for me, it was great having a co-founder, because when things were really tough going, I was like, I'm doing this to help bring Alan's dream to light. And for him, similarly, when things were really tough going, he's like, I owe it to Janine to, get through this. And, the banking one's a good example that I went to every single bank in New Zealand asking for a bank account multiple times. I'd written, because I'd worked in banking, I understood AML, those kind of the processes and policies and kind of formal structures you need to have in place. So I'd written this really comprehensive 60-page compliance program. And, sometimes it would get me in the front door, being able to waive this compliance program, showing that we were for real and we were serious. But the answer would very quickly still be no. Because I think it's just the easier answer, right? If for someone to say yes, they need to really look at it, think about it, understand the risks. Whereas saying no, it's a risk. And that was actually the reason how we managed to get a bank account, which, without a bank account, we would not have a business. You can't do business without a bank. And I'd approached all of these banks, got a no from all of them. So I thought I'd try a different tact. And I went to my network on LinkedIn, and this was a few years ago when I had few enough people that I could go through every single person. There's probably 500 at that stage. Went through every single one and looked, do they work for a bank? Have they worked for a bank in the past? And everyone that met one of those two criteria, I messaged them and was like, hey, this is my problem. Can you help me out? Can you introduce me to someone? And one person managed to introduce me to someone who introduced me to someone who said, I don't know that I can get you a yes, but if it's a no, I'll find out why. And I was like, I'll take that.
And that's so valuable, that because often they don't give you that information. It's just kind of, not even a forthright no sometimes. It's just kind of leaving you dangling, and you can't move forward with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really, the reason why I had a business that I was able to sell last week was because
you linked it, guys.
Yeah, took a chance and was like, I'll take responsibility for like getting the answer for you. Yes or no, I can't guarantee that, but I'll make sure I get you an answer. And I'm like, it was, important. And this is one of the things that I think is, it took me a long while to recognize the power of networks, but like your network is one of your most valuable tools. Like the answer to everything you need is usually just one step away in your network. Someone knows someone who has the answer.
Yeah, it's such a cliche about your network being your net worth, but it is really true. Yeah. You also can't do it alone, especially when you're in such a young, fast-moving, innovative space. I'm curious to also, I have all these preconceived notions, right? So please prove me wrong. But in my head, we have crypto, a male-dominated world. We have finance, a male-dominated world. We have tech, a male-dominated
Oh, no, wait, yeah.
a male-dominated world. And then there's you. Not just taking your space, but being the Joan of Arc of this crypto movement in New Zealand, like breaking through barriers, being the torchbearer. How was that received, and how did you navigate that?
It's a really interesting one that it was something that we did quite intentionally in some respects, and because my background was in strategy. So when we started Easy Crypto, it started a little bit accidentally, but once Alan and I got into business together, things were very intentional from then on. Because with my strategy background, within the first month of the business being up and running, we'd sat down and gone, where do we want to be in 5 years? Break that down into 3-year, 1 year, 90-day goals, and what are our strengths, weaknesses, all that kind of good strategy thinking. And one of the things that we saw as a strength in the business was me being a woman, because it's like we don't have that, crypto bros as a term hadn't even been coined then, but we could see it, right? It was like, this space isn't for everyone, at least that's not how it's being portrayed, but we think that should change. Like, crypto has developed this big ethos around the democratization of finance, and that was what drove us and what got us into it, is we really believed in this as a way to open up access and level the playing field for everybody, and it shouldn't just be for Silicon Valley guys, it should be everyone. Yeah. And so I could be a sort of a visible representation of that.
I like the mascot of crypto in New Zealand.
That also, like with my background in banking and having done all of that work around a regulatory and compliance side, it was like, it doesn't just, I want it to be for everyone, but I also want it to be legitimized and safe. And, not far into our journey with Easy Crypto, the big New Zealand player at the time, Cryptopia, got hacked and went under. And they'd been sort of, they were huge globally, but one of the reasons that they got big is that they weren't necessarily very compliant. Like there wasn't sort of KYC or all those sorts of rules being followed. So I wanted us to be seen very differently, to be safe and trusted, legitimate, played by the rules, and also to be, everyone, like mum, dads, old, young, like everyone could join in, and we were accessible and safe for everybody.
So how did you drive that? Because it's more than a business. It sounds like a movement, and it sounds like also educating the public around crypto and what it is, and most importantly, what it isn't. Yet you just told me you weren't allowed to advertise, you weren't allowed, a bank account to begin with. So how did you go about not just building that business, but really changing the perception of what is possible within this space?
I don't know if I had all the answers to that, but there are a few things that I did quite intentionally. Like one of them was I'd seen people that I admired who were like spokespeople for the industry. Like one of the main examples was John Bolton from Squirrel. Like you might not be in New Zealand at the time, but back when we started Easy Crypto, it was like every time anyone ever talked about mortgage rates in any media outlet, JB was the person who was quoted talking about what was happening to house prices and mortgage rates. He was
kind of like a Pavlov reaction.
Yeah.
The mortgage rates.
Yeah, exactly. He was just the go-to for media commentary, for quotes, the trusted source. And I was like, I want to be the JB of crypto. And that was actually written on our first strategic plan, was Janine becomes the JB of crypto. And so I called him up and I was like, hey, my name's Janine. I run this business and I want to know how you got to where you are and doing what you're doing. And so
That's amazing.
yeah, and he was so generous. He sat me, like, he caught up with me face to face. We had a coffee. He talked to me about what he did. He even, like, he gave me my first leg up that he was like, if you write a blog piece about cryptocurrency, we'll publish it on our website. And I was like, that's awesome, because now you can, like, and it's just like a little step. It's like now, as seamen. And then from that, like, I think he gave me a contact in a newspaper and I wrote an article for them. And it's just like little steps, right? But piece by piece, you build that reputation and that brand. And like brand building, it doesn't happen overnight, right? But it starts to have a snowball effect, because once people know you and associate you with a thing, then you'll get more of them. And yeah, it really worked over the next couple of years to just, become the go-to person in New Zealand for crypto, and to help build that brand for the business and for myself, and also for the industry.
I so admire the balls in just being like, I want to be like that guy. Let me call him up and ask him how. Tell me, because we've spoken briefly prior to this interview about just the concept of imposter syndrome, and we're just going on about how you're in a very male-dominated world, the odds basically against you, with this big dream. And where do you find the courage? And was it all kind of balls and full-blown power ahead, or were there some ups and downs in that personal growth aspect to it?
Absolutely. I think for me, the biggest thing that I've gotten from the Easy Crypto journey from the last 8 years, so much has happened. We've been through so much, but the biggest win for me from that has been how I've grown as a person and my personal development. And particularly in those first few years, and like imposter syndrome is such a big thing. It's still something I struggle with, but nothing like what I had in the past. And again, you'll probably hear me use the word intentional a lot, because there are a lot of things I'm very intentional about a lot of things. And one of them has been how I work on my natural feelings of imposter syndrome. And I made a really big effort when I started realizing that I could look back and go, hey, the person I was last month or 6 months ago, I've changed quite a lot since then. I'm doing things now that I didn't think I could do then. And having this real intentional process of reflection back to go, I did this thing, and maybe I wasn't great at it, but I did it and I managed it. And it's more, it was a stretch beyond what I thought I could have done. And I need to bake that in. I need to lock it in and go, leveled up. I've achieved this level. Now I'm here. And then the next time I do something that's just a bit harder or a bit higher, I need to grab it and lock it in and let that reinforce my confidence.
Yeah, because we forget. And I also believe, especially if you're a growth-oriented person, if what you were doing a month ago, a few months ago, a year ago, doesn't make you cringe, you're doing something wrong. I look back, literally, I look back and I'm like, oh God. And that's what I signed up for. Yeah. As an entrepreneur, as someone who values personal development. So that cringe factor is often something I at least try to celebrate.
Yeah. And maybe flip it, right? Just be like, the fact that you can look back and it makes you cringe goes, I have come so far. Right. Look at me now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I did when I worked at the bank, crypto started to become this big thing that everyone was talking about, and people knew that I was into crypto, and they're like, Janine, come and give a presentation on it. And I had not public spoke, is that?
Yes, I'm Dutch. That's me. I don't speak English.
I'm not public spoke since primary school, right? Yeah. And so I was, can I say shitting myself?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was absolutely shitting myself. Literally, in the minute before I was supposed to walk on stage in this room full of 400 people, I was like, I don't think I can do this. I need to pull out cold sweats, everything. But I got up and I did it, and people told me that I did great, and I was like, I'm sure they were just being nice, but the point is I did it. And then the next time I had to speak, I could go, I've done it and it wasn't terrible. I can do it again. And now I actually love public speaking. I hate preparing for it, but chuck me up on a stage, let me talk, and I'm like, I love it. But I never would have done it if I hadn't been able to take that first step and then look back and go, okay, I did that. I can push myself further. I can do a little bit more. And you don't go from 0 to 100, but if you recognize that you've gone to 1 and then you recognize you've gone to 1.5, you'll get there, right? Yeah, and you can do it over and over again. Yeah. And I think what I've learned with those things, the most important thing is you go into fight or flight, right? When we're triggered, when we're scared.
And the most important thing is actually to stretch ourselves and our nervous system and to kind of say, but did you die? And just prove over and over to yourself, okay, I didn't die. Okay, therefore it's safe to lean in.
Yeah.
And just keep doing it. I mean, don't go too crazy. We don't want to...
Yeah, you don't want to burn yourself out or push yourself past the point of where your resilience can take you. But yeah, sometimes you definitely need to push past what's comfortable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also push past the idea of being ready, or the idea of that even existing, that element where you feel ready.
Yeah, that moment never comes.
I'd love to just take a little side alley here, a little circle back. But you were saying at the time when you started, people didn't quite know what crypto was. Now, obviously, on the one hand, we've come a long way. On the other hand, I'm not sure we have, because I find in my world, it's still quite a, not necessarily taboo, but a scary topic and a controversial topic. So I'd love to know, for the female founders that are listening, that are seeing and hearing all about this crypto and Bitcoin, but actually don't really know what that means, why you think everyone should have a basic understanding of it and what it can do.
Great question. Personally, I think that we, over the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years, will see finance completely digitized. Like at the moment, and again, having worked in a bank, I saw behind the scenes and what's under the hood there. It's like, it's scary, right? A lot of stuff is still paper-based. But, the internet took information digital, and what that unlocked for us in terms of, us recording this podcast now, we go home, we can order things on Uber Eats or HelloFresh, or, turn on your light switches or the voice command. Like all of this stuff was unlocked by information being digitized. And with cryptocurrency or blockchain, what you have is the ability to digitize finance and assets. And assets is quite a broad range of things. It's money, it can be stocks and shares, your house, identity, and there's a whole range of assets that can become digital. And that will unlock a huge range of applications, products, services we'd never thought about. Like the internet, though, you don't necessarily need to know how it works. Like most of us don't understand the internet, TCP/IP, HTTP has all the code underneath the hood, but we know how to use it and we know what it can enable. So similarly with that, I think what is important for people is to understand the concept of digital assets and what it can mean, what it can enable, what businesses we can unlock with that, and what we as founders can, run forward on, and where the future is going to head. It doesn't mean you need to know how blockchain works. That aside, if it interests you, by all means dive in, because it's actually kind of cool. And for the geeks of us in the room, understanding the how and the why underneath the hood's kind of fun, and blockchain's not super complex. It's a lot simpler than something like the internet.
Yeah, I really love that. And it's because I think we can overcomplicate things, especially things that scare us, and we stay in this mode of trying to wrap our heads around it. But I think how many of us don't actually really know how money, like fiat money, how it works, how the banks operate. I think, sometimes you get in your car and you drive off, you don't need to know exactly how this engine is running. It's just running. Why, besides the potential business opportunities crypto in this whole world unlocks, why do you think it's important that the not just the digitization, if that's the word, but the democratization, thank you, the democratization, that one, of money, because that is the aspect of it that really pulled me in quite a few years ago. And how do you see that moving in unison with your kind of bank background and your regulated background?
Yeah, this is one of the things that was always a big driver for me, was cryptocurrency is very open access to everyone. There are no barriers to entry. As long as you have access to the internet and preferably a smartphone, you can interact. And there's sort of one of the things that I've witnessed is if you have wealth, it is easier to make more wealth. So someone who has investments, who has a lot of money, can easily make much more money more quickly than someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, has a salary, can maybe save a little bit, but doesn't necessarily own assets. And that was one of, I guess, the big promises for crypto for me, is this idea that, hey, even if you only have $1, you can have the same investment opportunities as someone with $100 million. I have to say, though, I feel like we haven't delivered on that promise the way that I thought we would. Sort of, 5 years ago, that was just this huge, passion for me, driving me. And now I'm like the industry, we've enabled things like meme coins and crypto gambling and kind of, and scams. And so while the ethos is there and it hasn't changed, I think there's this, I guess, underlying issue that we have with everything, that humanity is going to go where the money is. And it's like, sure, there might be a little bit of money to be made in helping get everyone access, get 8 billion people access to finance, but there's a lot more money to be made in gambling and scams. And yeah.
Yeah, it's like the internet, like you just say, like in itself, it's neutral.
Yeah.
It's what the people do with it, right? And I think I can understand that might feel a bit like a disillusion, like you have this big dream of going to change the world. And in saying that, you've created this whole new pathway for, I don't know how many New Zealanders to even access that. And in the end, if crypto is a neutral thing, energy, just like the internet is, it's what they do with it, right? And that's where your vision and what you've shared kind of lives on. Okay, circling back, you have just sold this business. You've poured your heart and soul, blood, sweat, tears, margaritas, all of it into it for the last 8 years. You've sold, happy with the sale, and it brings up a lot because what now? I don't know. Perfect. I love that you say that, because just from my personal experience, even if a sale has been on the horizon for years, right? Even if you start with an exit plan in mind, which wasn't your case, but the reality of it is so different. But what my understanding is, your passion, or one of your many passion, is in sharing financial literacy and fluency, and that can come in many ways, shapes, or forms. Yeah, how are you? Because it's fair, you don't know, right? It's also very fresh. Let's just acknowledge we're like a week into this. How are you taking care of yourself in this process? Because you shared the biggest part of building the business was actually your personal growth and who you became in the process. So who are you being right now to support yourself through this next little transition phase?
It's a really tough one, because I have to say self-care is something I've been really bad at over the years. Like, the business was all consuming. Like, it was my day job and my nights and my weekends, and often would dream about it. So like, it's almost 24/7, right? And so in some respects, having to take, being able to lift that weight off my shoulders, like, I'm still involved in the business. I'm still, working and, supporting the team through the transition, but it is not this all encompassing behemoth anymore, which in some respects is great. And I know that I was really struggling with burnout, over the last year or 18 months. And so to be able to have a little bit of release from that is good. But then there is the question of, what do I fill that gap with? And can I just actually not fill the gap and just take a bit of time to give myself a chance to refresh? And it's not one of the things I'm great at, right? And I think sort of, a lot of personality types that, probably a lot of people who are listening to the podcast, it's like, this is, we're not necessarily good at taking breaks and taking downtime. And just sit at home, have a hot bath and a glass of wine and just like do nothing for a night. Like it is something that I'm wrestling with, because I know I need to look after myself. And I pushed myself through the resilience layer and sort of out the other side a few too many times in the last 3 years in particular. But also, I don't want to do nothing.
There's also like a happy medium to be found there. I hate, I don't believe in the concept of balance. I think that's absolute divorce crap. But there's this perfectly balanced point in the middle between like two ends of a spectrum. But it's funny how I think often as like high achieving female founders, we tend to think in extremes, right? We're either our business is our identity, this is our life, this is it. Or what am I going to do? Sit at home and do nothing? Like I think there's a lot there in between. And a lot we don't really think about, because we were talking before you were sharing how, you were wrestling with navigating burnout for quite a while. You've walked into the board office, I think more than once, to sound the alarms. Tell us about that.
It's a really hard one with starting a business, and it's not something I definitely did not think about when I started the business, was what is my exit strategy? Because it's not like you can just resign when you're the CEO or founder, you've raised funds, you've got a team. Like, you can't just be like, hey guys, I'm going to go, I mean, I guess you can, but it's very hard. You've got a lot of obligations, a lot of people to look after, a lot of promises to live up to. And even when you're really struggling and things are going terribly wrong, handing in the resignation letter isn't an option that's going to go down very well. So that was a hard one for me. And I think particularly in our industry, we raised funds in 2021, and then 2022, the bottom fell out of the crypto markets. Our international expansions were completely blocked by regulatory changes in the countries we're going into. Our internal expansion had gone way too fast. I was also in my personal life having all sorts of issues, and also had a dispute with the ex-business partner that was just weighing me down. And in the middle of all that, my board turned around and was like, look, we've been looking at the finances and you need to cut numbers. You need to get back to break even. And that was a headcount reduction of about 60%. And it was just
brutal.
So brutal. And I guess, sorry, I meandered a bit there because I just started thinking through everything that was happening at that point in time. It was hard. But where I was starting with that was when you start a business, you don't necessarily think about what is the right size of business for me to run? Where is the spot where I'm comfortable? Do I want to lead 1,000-person business, or do I want to lead a 10-person business? Or is it just me and my co-founder? And you also don't necessarily think about, do I want to still be running this business in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Do I want flexibility if my circumstance change? And those things can be quite hard when you've started a business, and particularly when you've hired other people and taken money from investors. You narrow your options and your flexibility about what you as a business owner can actually do. You can always do anything. You always have choices.
Yeah, but you have obligations.
You have obligations, and for me in particular, I want to do right by people. That was always a really big driver for me, is I want to do right by my staff, my customers, my investors, and that narrows the options a lot.
Yeah, and also that often goes at the expense of doing right by yourself.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. Would you recommend now to people that have a dream, have a vision to start a business, that they think about those things beforehand? Because I think there's something to be said for, you don't think about it. And then there's the kind of magic carpet ride that, a business kind of takes you on, and a certain amount of flexibility required to kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that magic carpet ride, like you say, a lot of it is driven by, not necessarily driven by, but you get a lot of accolades and prestige for the external proof points that other people think are good. Yes. And so it's the question of how many staff do you have? And the higher the number, the more wow, which is not necessarily a good thing. Or how much money did you raise? And again, the higher the number, the more bravo. Whereas, I was on a panel the other day, and Jovan from Emerge was $12 million is 12 million promises. And I that is how we should be looking at it, instead of going,
I love that.
My business, we had this, terrible, looking in hindsight now, I'm we shouldn't have bragged about this. But at the time, what we had never taken seed or angel funding, partially because no one would invest in us to get crypto. But that's
we've never taken any funding.
People have been throwing money at us, and we're no.
Not that I wanted to touch them, but
no one wanted to touch us. And so our first funding raise we were profitable, we were large. We went straight into a Series A, and because it was the first raise we'd done, we actually set the record for the largest first funding round in New Zealand, which made a great PR headline at the time. But in hindsight, I'm why were we bragging about that? That's actually, it's basically we had the largest set of promises for a first-time givers of promises. And I'm is that a good thing? Do I want to be that person who's made all these promises? And so I think we need to flip the script on, like, we see success by these external things, whereas success should be like, are you making a difference? Are you driving the company that you want to be driving as a founder? And are you doing what's, what aligns to your values and your goals, rather than are you externally getting great numbers that people go, oh, wow.
I know, the vanity numbers. Oh, that like hits me in the feels. And you know what the funny thing is about those kind of ridiculous metrics of success? I mean, I talk about this all the time. Was the biggest kind of follower and sucker for, number of people on the payroll, revenue, whatever kind of external status metrics that must mean that not just my business is successful, but that I'm worthy.
Well, right? Well, like you said before, right? We tie our identity to our business on a lot, right? It's like, yeah, my business is doing great, therefore I must be a great CEO, like, obviously.
Therefore, I'm great. Okay, I am miserable, but have you seen these stats? Have you seen the numbers? So yes, I'm with you 100%. And in saying that, and in having lived that, and advocating very passionately for the opposite approach of like a internal metric of success. I've even developed a whole model around it, your personal success blueprint.
Tell me what.
I'll tell you all about it. We'll have a little play with it. But it's all around like, what is your definition of success in this very now moment? Because that also varies as you evolve, because you're, like you said, you're not the same person you were a year ago. So we get to adjust that, and that gets to evolve, and then we can align our experience in our business, in our life accordingly. And even though I know all that and I believe it with all of my heart, I need to schedule check-ins with myself where I remind myself that that's what I'm doing. I'll give you an example. I'm on a call yesterday with the amazing production agency that helps us put the Powerhouse Diaries together. And they're going through the results of the last month. And they're going through the likes, the listens, the engagement. And I'm sitting there, I'm getting caught up in it. And I had to like stop myself. I'm like, these are not the metrics that matter. What matters to me is, does this make an impact? Does this reach the right people? Obviously, if it's more of the right people that are then positively impacted, absolutely, pop the champagne, any reason for that. But I was just reminded how quickly, despite all that knowledge, I fall back into, oh yeah, but look how many likes on this post, or who cares? Who cares? Did it make a difference? Are you helped by anything you heard? Does it inspire someone to keep going, or does someone feel seen or heard? That's what it's about. It's so hard to remember that in a world that's built on different dashboards.
Yeah. And they're not necessarily uncorrelated either, right? So like your ability to reach the audience you want to reach and impact them is probably going to be correlated with likes and, reposts and stuff, but it's not the metric that you're after.
Exactly. So looking back, you were saying, like, would you recommend people, or maybe actually not looking back, scratch that, looking forward. No matter when and what you end up doing somewhere in the future, we all know something's going to come because you are just your creator. What would you do differently?
Two things, probably. I say that, but I might think of more as I start talking. But the two that spring to mind initially are, firstly, around fundraising. Like, I think it's seen as this real accolade, and I think in a lot of cases it's really useful and like a good next step. But I think we need to, it's almost like it's the business version of getting married, having kids, white picket fence. Like, you do it because it's the next step and what you're supposed to do.
I love that analogy, the business version of the white picket fence.
Yeah. Whereas, and it's like, it's definitely right for some people in some stages and some businesses, but we shouldn't all expect to hit that milestone just because it's the dumb thing, right? And I think that's probably going to change more, now that AI helps anyone build a lot of different businesses very easily, very low cost. I think we're going to see a bit of a revolution in that VC model mindset. Maybe we'll see. But I mean, I think that is one of the things that I would do differently, is like, would I have raised? I mean, with what I know now, probably not. With what I knew then, maybe I still would have, but I would have wanted to think about it more carefully first. The other thing is that I would be so much more careful in terms of who I hire, because one of the biggest things that I witnessed in my business that I wish I could, I tend not to have regrets. And there's most things in life I'm like, there's always a silver lining, or you can see how that bad choice led you to this outcome. And I'm like, I'm pretty like,
No regrets.
no regrets mostly, but I have seen how much damage a bad hire can do. And that's the one thing that I do differently is like, everyone's great and I'm sure they'll be awesome. And, I'm not the best judge of character is I guess what I'm trying to say. And that's something I do differently is just have more people around me when making hiring decisions and lean more heavily on other people's judgment because I know it's something I'm a little weak on.
Is that true? Or do you not trust your own intuition and go kind of for that same model of what's right and wrong in your hiring?
Oh, it is a tough call actually, because I think probably I would have had some intuition, but I'm so analytical. I find it really hard to hear my intuition and listen to it. And I get very confused about what's intuition versus did I just have a dodgy burger,
Did I just have a dodgy burger? Yes, we tend to mentally override it, especially if there's a lot of voices around us giving their opinion.
But also like just being able to lead and like make it like I might be the CEO, but it doesn't all have to be on my head and my decisions. So just like reckon a few more people in to help make hard decisions and important decisions as well. Like, key hires is a really good one. Yeah.
So if you could go back in time to 2017, 5 days after your brother climbed out of that hammock, and you could tap Janine back then on the shoulder and give her one piece of advice to navigate the 8 years of roller coaster ahead, what would that be?
I mean, part of me wants to give her a heads up that it's just going to be so freaking hard. But then I also think maybe it's better not to know. I mean, I think...
Would you not have done it? Was there really a part of you that was like, let me start the first crypto exchange in a completely new world that isn't regulated or kind of understood? Should be easy?
I mean, I never expected it to be easy, but I never expected it to be as hard as it was. And I had this real proud moment when a very famous New Zealand businessman who had tried to start a crypto business, and he and I had talked a few times, and I'd given him some pointers and whatnot on the way, but he sort of eventually decided it wasn't for him. And he said to me, he's like, I've started a lot of businesses, and there is like nothing is anywhere near as hard as crypto. And I was just like, I'll stop it. But
don't stop though.
So like there was, there were so many things that were so much harder than I expected. But startup is harder. I love that quote from is it Jeff Wan from NVIDIA, who's like, someone was like, so if you could do it all again, he's like, oh no, I wouldn't. And this is a guy who's like literally a billionaire from his business. He's like, no. So anyway, it is hard, but I think if I could go back and give myself one sort of piece of wisdom or anything, I would say that it's worth it. And obviously for me, like I've managed to exit the business and sort of take that stress off my shoulders, and like I'm in a good position now. But even along the way, like it's been worth it just for the personal development that I've had, how much I've grown as a person, the relationship I've built with my brother. Like we were siblings, but not really friends before, and now we're like super close. It's like that's been awesome. I've made such good friends. I've learnt that I'm a really good leader, which is something I never knew about myself. And I love being a leader and like building a really awesome workplace for people to work in, and something that people love coming to work every day. Like, there's all these things that I had discovered on the journey that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't taken that chance. If I'd stayed in corporate, I'd still probably be there and probably hating it. And well, I mean, I was hating it then, so I don't think anything would have changed in the last 8 years. And
they don't care anymore.
Yeah, so even exit aside, I think it's just been such a good journey, but a really hard one, but so worthwhile.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much. We always end the episode with a little bit of a flipping of the script. A question from you to me.
Can I see what's left on the question list? I
don't think I even looked at that question list, but by all means. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good one. Yes. So flip the script. So do you have a question you'd like to ask me before we wrap this up?
Yes, I'm fascinated because you had some super cool people on your show. You've done a few of these, and I'd love to know, like, what are the one or two key themes that you've seen come through from your guests that maybe surprised you or maybe reinforced something you had a hunch about before?
Oh, I love that question. I think what I've seen and what I've noticed through these interviews, but also just through my work as a business coach for female founders, and through my own personal journey, is that in the end, we all struggle in different ways with the exact same thing. It comes down to identity. It comes down to a sense of self-worth. And that sounds really depressing, but it's actually, I think it's actually really lovely to realize that, and I think that's why I think it's so important to have these conversations, because let's make entrepreneurs, but specifically female founders, the new celebrities, instead of like wondering what celebrity, ate for lunch. Like, let's be inspired by people who've actually built worlds, changed lives, created ripple effects of awesomeness and impact, all in their own way, different capacities, different sizes of business, different stages of business, different stages of their life. But every single person I come across, no matter what they do, it comes from a space of wanting to create change and wanting to create impact. And that gives me hope for the state of the world, because that's a bit messy. But in terms of the fact that these women that I idolize, I look up to, this was the premise for this podcast. I want to just sit and have conversations with my biggest business girl crushes. This is purely self-serving, guys. Like, I'm hoping you enjoy this, but that was how this started. And to hear that we all, no matter where we are, how well we've just exited or not, or how long we've been in business, or if we just have a drink, we all come up to the same hurdles, and learning from each other's stories and experience can help us navigate them. We'll still all come up to our own shit anyway, but with more ease and grace, and make us feel less alone. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. Thank you so much, Janine. I really appreciate you coming in. Having a conversation with my business girl crush. And a week after your sale went through. Like, thank you.
Thanks, Yael. It's been such a pleasure.